breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hey, warmer from below. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast, and we've got an excellent podcast for you today. Joining me in segment number 2, the one and only Will Hill. He does amazing work here at the network. He covers a little bit of everything and does so also well. Football, basketball, baseball, you name it, he does it. We're going to get his thoughts on a few teams that he's a little bit bullish / bearish on. I will ruin one of those teams. And we did this before their game against the Arizona Diamondbacks. He was making the case that the Colorado Rockies are going to completely stink on ice. And through one game, boy, was he right. That was rough to say the least. And we will recap everything that we saw from opening day here in a second. But we're going to be joined by him. He's going to give you guys some futures. We're going to be taking a look at just some of these teams in general to get you guys primed up for the upcoming season. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please just send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Now, did not get in any Twitter /X questions today, so if anything comes up along the way, whether that be tomorrow, whether that be a month or two from now, more than happy to answer it. But let's take a look at what we all got on opening day in baseball. Very nice to be able to say that. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
And how about if we started with these aforementioned Colorado Rockies and the fact that, my goodness, they got completely tarred by the Arizona Diamondbacks. 16-1 the final as the Diamondbacks put up 2 touchdowns with the extra points in the third inning. A 14-run third inning for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and every starter for the Arizona Diamondbacks in this game, I believe, got multiple hits, except for Corbin Carroll, because Corbin Carroll drew a pair of walks instead. Like, that's just absolutely wild. You had only one home run in this game, by the way, for the Arizona Diamondbacks. That'd be Lourdes Gurriel's first of the campaign as Zach Gallen. I mean, it wasn't a dominant start by any stretch of the imagination. 3 strikeouts in 5 innings. He gave up 1 run, but you really didn't need him to do much from there. Luis Frias, Kyle Nelson, Miguel Castro, Scott McGough, they were all able to give you a scoreless inning. Meanwhile, for Colorado, Kyle Freeland got 8 outs, and he gave up 10 runs, all of which were earned, including that homer, and somehow, someway, that was still better than what Anthony Molina did. In his MLB debut, he posted up an ERA of $1.62. 6 runs surrendered, and he got 1 out of the bullpen. Nick Mears was able to give you a scoreless inning. Jalen Beeks, 2 1/3 innings scoreless, and Victor Vodnik was able to come in for 2 scoreless innings. So they all down the fort after that, but you know what? 16 runs of damage? Yeah, it was already done. And shock, surprise, surprise. The money came out on the Oakland A's, and the money was wrong. The Cleveland Guardians absolutely lambasted the A's 8-0. Like, Cleveland opened up a -160 favorite. They closed at a lot of spots, closer to -135, -140. I'm not sure why. Shane Bieber, he had a fever for giving you strikeouts, and he looks to be back, by the way. This was tremendous. 11 punch-outs, 6 scoreless innings. Eli Morgan, Nick Sandlin, Tim Aaron, they all provide a scoreless inning from there, and for the Guardians, you don't have a ton of power on the roster, no home runs, but they go 5-12 with men in scoring position. For Alex Wood, his debut with the Oakland A's, not great. 6 runs surrendered, all of which earned in 3 1/3 innings. Kyle Mueller was able to give you 2 1/3 innings scoreless. TJ McFarland scoreless inning before Michael Kelly, the former Guardian, he gives up 2 runs in 2 innings. But for the Oakland A's, pick it up right where they left off last season. Not doing the world's greatest job. For the Walker Texas Rangers, our DK Network write-up. Very fortunate to get this one in, but you know what? We'll take it. We're now 2-0 on these write-ups to begin the season. And for the Texas Rangers, they win by a count of 4-3. And you feel for Justin Seal. I've not seen an injury update on him, but he left this game holding either his hamstring or his quad. He was going to field a ground ball, and, well, he was unable to go back into the game after that. He was leaving holding his leg, for lack of a better term, and he goes 4 2/3 innings, allows a run along the way. And then from there, the bullpen wasn't too bad. Julian Merriweather gave you not out of the bullpen. Yancy Almonte did allow a solo home run going deep for the Walker Texas Rangers. Adolis Garcia is first, and for the Rangers, they were down a run in the ninth inning off of Adbert Alzolay. Travis Jankowski, who had one home run all season long, he supplies the boom with a home run. You had, prior to that, Hector Neris provided scoreless inning. Mark Leiter Jr. did as well, and then Drew Smiley has to come in the 10th inning, gives up the unearned run, and for the Chicago Cubs, I think that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Christopher Morel, who had a shot at a grand slam in the 10th inning. David Robertson has to come in. It barely bends fellas. He's able to get on the 10th inning scoreless. For Nathan Eovaldi, relatively good start here. Only 3 strikeouts, but 2 runs surrendered over the course of 6 innings. Joshua Boris, Kirby Yates, they both supply a scoreless inning before Jose Leclerc. He gave up a run in his inning of work. Did not allow a single hit, though. It was actually a stolen base, as I believe it was Michael Busch who scored on like a wild pitch. I think that they had originally scored it a stolen base, but turned out to be a wild pitch. But the Rangers, they get us to 2-0 on the write-ups. We love to see that. Unfortunately, we did not write up the Chicago White Sox. They got shut out 1-0 against Detroit. Now, I will say this, Garrett Crochet actually looked really good in his first career start. 8 punch-outs, gives up 106 innings. Problem was, nobody helped him out. Michael Kopech, Dominic Leon, Davey Garcia, they supply a scoreless inning for the White Sox. 3 hits. They left every man on base for the Detroit Tigers. Tariq Skubal, absolutely lights out. 6 scoreless innings. From there, Shelby Miller, a scoreless inning, and then Jason Foley, Andrew Chafin. They combined for 2 scoreless, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of unders in White Sox games this season, and we're probably going to see a lot of overs in Angels games, not necessarily because of their offense, but because their pitching sucks. For the Baltimore Orioles, they absolutely take it to the Halos by a count of 11-3. First career start for Corbin Burns in Baltimore. He does allow a solo home run to Mike Trout. That's going to happen from time to time, but settled down from there. He gave that up in the first inning, finished with that solo home run allowed, 11 punch-outs, very solid outing. Keegan Aiken was able to give you a scoreless inning with Michael Baumann, and Dylan Tate, who missed the entirety of the season last year, came back, did give up 2 runs, one of which was earned, but I mean, that was more than enough cushion for him, as you had Anthony Santander, Cedric Mullins, both supply a home run in this one for the Baltimore Orioles, as long for this game was not Patrick Sandoval. He got 5 outs, he gave up 5 runs, 3 of which were earned, and then you had one of those home runs given up by Jose Suarez, who went 3 2/3 innings, giving up 3 runs, and then the other was given up by Jose Cicerno. He went for 2 outs, and he gave up 3 runs, all of which were earned. Adam Simber, scoreless inning for the Angels, along Guillermo Zangia. Hopefully I said that correctly, but Halos, man, not great to say the least. And for the Royals, not a lot doing with their offense. 4-1, the Minnesota Twins get the job done. As for the Twins, they got to Cole Ragans early in this one, though still a relatively solid start for Ragans. He gives up 2 runs over the course of 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. Did allow, though, a home run, as Royce Lewis gets his first of the campaign off of Cole Ragans, and he then left with an injury, which, man, talk about a pair of guys in Royce Lewis along with Byron Buxton, who have just been hurt by the injury bug so much. Hopefully he's okay. But Pablo Lopez, one of our favorites, gives up a solo home run over the course of 7 innings. He gave that one up to Mikel Garcia. From there, you had the Minnesota Twins get Brock Stewart, Griffin Jackson in the game for a scoreless inning, and for the Kansas City Royals, bullpen looked relatively solid with Nick Anderson, Anel Zerpa, both giving a scoreless inning, but Chris Ryan does give up 2 runs over the course of his inning of work, so Royals picking up right where they left off last season. If you, like me, had the Houston Astros, this was a rough one, as they lose by a count of 5-4 to the Yankees. Astros score 4 runs in the first 2 innings of the game, and then nothing after that. Nestor Cortez got shelled in those first 2 innings, giving up 4 runs in 5 innings, including a home run to Mr. Jake Myers, his first of the campaign. But then from there, the Yankees, who had a really good bullpen last year, they went to work. Clay Holmes, he gives up 3 hits in his inning of work, but doesn't give up a single run. Ian Hamilton, Jonathan Loaizaga, they held down the fort for a combined 3 scoreless innings, and the Yankees did strand 10 men on base, but you were able to get home run number 1 of the season for Oswaldo Cabrera. He comes up big in this game, and that one comes off of Rafael Montero, who I have known him more as Rafael Montero Bull. He gives up a home run in his inning of work. Framber Valdez, 4 2/3 innings, not long for this game, gives up 3 runs, 6 straight start dating back to last year, which he has given up 3+ runs, and he has given up 3+ runs in 13 out of his last 18. Rough to say the least. Seth Martinez, Tanner Scott, Josh Hader were all able to supply a scoreless inning, but he also had Ryan Presley give up a run in his inning of work as well. So the Yankees, they're able to get the job done. They get an opening day win, and so do the Pittsburgh Pirates. In the long game of the day in 12 innings, the Pirates get it done by a count of 6-5. Now, concern for Mitch Keller. His velocity was down in spring training, gives up 5 runs, 4 of which were earned in 5 2/3 innings, but the bullpen from there was spotless. You had Jose Hernandez give you a scoreless inning, Luis Ortiz, 2 scoreless innings, Aroldis Chapman came in for a scoreless inning, Ryan Baruchi, 1 2/3 innings scoreless, and then the duo of Hunter Stratton along with Josh Fleming supply a scoreless inning, and the Pirates win this game despite going 2 of 17 with men in scoring position because they had a trio of home runs as Oniel Cruz, Brian Reynolds, along with Ed Alvarez all provide a home run for the Miami Marlins. Jesus Luzardo gave up one of those. Solid start, gives up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings, but then Andrew Nardi gives up 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning. You had the other home run given up by Sixto Sanchez. Welcome back to the big leagues. He gives up a home run in his inning of work, but he did have Anthony Bender give you a scoreless inning. George Soriano out of the bullpen, and they had to have 3 innings out of Declan Cronin. He did give up just 1 unearned run in that time span, so he actually did a very solid job at extra innings, but Tanner Scott also a scoreless inning, but rough for a Miami Marlins team that they themselves did not have a lot going on with men in scoring position. For the Miami Marlins, they went a whopping 2 of 17 themselves with men in scoring position, so both teams made like your buddy at the bar and could not close late in that game. As for the Toronto Blue Jays, they were closing early and often, 8-2. They take down the Tampa Bay Rays. Jose Barrios, relatively solid start, gives up 2 runs in 6 innings, and he's really gotten better in terms of his road starts. He does give up a home run in this one to Yandy Diaz, his first of the campaign, but for Zach Eflin, he was pretty effing awful. He gives up 3 home runs, 6 runs in total in 5 2/3 innings as take him deep. Kevon Biggio, Vlad Guerrero Jr., George Springer, and for the Blue Jays, bullpen looked relatively solid. Tim Mesa, Nate Pearson, along with Trevor Richards all supply a scoreless inning. Meanwhile, for the Rays, Sean Armstrong does give up 2 runs in 1 1/3 innings before Garrett Clevenger, Phil Maton both supply a scoreless inning. The LA Dodgers, they do what they always do, win by multiple runs. This Dodgers team has won 100-plus games each of the last 2 years. Fewer than 20 of those wins in both years have come by less than 2 runs, by 1 run in general. So that's something that you want to take note of if you're looking at their run line. 7-1, the Dodgers able to get it done as Miles Michaelis, shock, surprise, surprise, he got destroyed in this one, giving up 5 runs in 4 1/3 innings, including home runs to Mookie Betts, his second of the campaign. He had one in the Seoul series, along with Freddie Freeman. Tyler Glasnow, he was on point. 5 punch-outs, gives up 1 run in 6 innings as he did allow a home run to Paul Goldschmidt, but from there he had Ryan Yarbrough, a 3-inning save. He went scoreless in 3 innings, and for the St. Louis Cardinals, Andre Palante gives up a run in 1 2/3 innings. Matthew Liberatore, scoreless inning. Riley O'Brien, he gives up a run in an inning, but the Dodgers, they're able to get the job done. They get a nice convincing win, and the San Diego Padres were able to slam their way to a victory as well. 6-4, they take down the San Francisco Giants. For the Giants, Michael Conforto was able to get a home run off of Robert Suarez, his first of the campaign, as that was a rough one if you took the under, as this was a game where you had 3 runs scored in the first 6 innings of the game, and then a 6-run explosion in the 7th inning as Yu Darvish, very good start. He gets 7 strikeouts, gives up a run in 5 innings. Tom Cosgrove was able to give you a scoreless inning, and then Johnny Brito, you got to avoid this guy, gives up 2 runs in 1/3 of an inning. He was rough in that Seoul series as well. Yuki Matsui, he was able to come in. He comes over from the Nippon Baseball League, 1 2/3 innings scoreless. And for the San Francisco Giants, Luke Jackson, no outs, gave up 3 runs, all of which were earned. That was rough. Logan Webb, pretty solid start, gives up 2 runs over the course of 6 innings. Ryan Walker did give up a run in an inning, but you're also able to get a scoreless inning out of Eric Miller in his MLB debut. So those guys were relatively solid, but things did get a little bit nutty in that game, and things are always nutty when the Cincinnati Reds are involved, and Cincinnati was on to a win. 8-2, they take down the Washington Nationals. For the Nationals, you have Cy Gray. His nickname in this game should have been Hickory. He got smoked, giving up 7 runs over the course of 4 innings, including a pair of bombs, as it was Nick Martini who went deep for home runs number 1 and 2 of the campaign for him. And for the Cincinnati Reds, Frankie Montas, not necessarily a bunch of swing and miss here, but 6 scoreless innings, did not give up a single run. You had Emilio Pagan come in. He did allow 2 runs in his inning of work, including a home run to Mr. Eddie Rosario, his first of the campaign. From there, you were able to get a scoreless inning out of Brent Suter. And for the Washington Nationals, bullpen after Gray left was not too bad. Tanner Rainey gives up a run in an inning, but Dylan Floro, Matt Barnes throw in there as well. Robert Garcia, they're all able to supply a scoreless inning. And then you did see late the Boston Red Sox take down the Seattle Mariners. This by kind of 6-4, as for Boston, you had a pair of home runs, Rafael Devers, along with Tyler O'Neill. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is going to be a great acquisition for them. And Brian Bayo, if you were looking for a dark horse for Cy Young, that was honestly my pick. Can't say I bet a whole bunch of money on it, but 50-1, I don't think it's too bad. He gives up 2 runs over the course of his 5 innings. Did allow a home run in this one to Mitch Haniger, his first, and then Dylan Moore was able to get a home run in this one as well. That comes off of Yoli Rodriguez, who gives up that home run in his inning of work. Isaiah Campbell gives up a run in an inning as well, but Curtis Martin, Kenley Jansen, scoreless 8th and 9th innings. And for the Seattle Mariners, not the start that they were looking for. Luis Castillo, traditionally a slow starter, gives up 4 runs over the course of 5 innings. Tyler Cicado from there gives up a run in an inning. You had Cody Bolton come in for 2 innings. He did allow one of those home runs before Austin Voth comes in for a scoreless inning of his own. And if you look at what we got in Major League Baseball, day number 1, 8 overs of 5 unders was a little bit overwhelming. We saw that last season as well. And favorites on the money line, they did relatively solid for you. They went 10-4, and if you looked at the Soul Series, you had 1 favorite, 1 underdog be able to come in with that sort of mix. You did see 1 over and 1 under in that series as well, but all in all, a good day for overs, and just great to have baseball back in our lives. We're going to be taking a look at all these trends all throughout the season, and a man that does such an amazing job of taking a look at this great game, that would be our good friend Will Hill, who does great work over at VSiN. He joins me next to give us a nice primer for this baseball season right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family of Podcasts. And it is always great to be joined by this man, as he's one of the ultimate utility players over at VSiN. You want a little football, he's got you covered there. You want a little baseball, he's got you covered there. You want basketball, list goes on and on. Will Hill does an absolutely terrific job taking a look at so many different things every single time he joins the show. He always lends such good insights, as I know that he's very dialed into what we're going to be getting this baseball season. You're able to follow Will on Twitter/X at not the Will Hill. That is 2 E's on the. And Will, it is always a pleasure to have you aboard. Thank you so much.
Greg, appreciate you having me on. Appreciate the kind words. You do a tremendous job yourself. So fun time of the year. Getting a little tingly earlier looking at the apps, and boy, you're looking under MLB, and for a while it's futures, it's awards, it's win totals, but finally we get listed pitchers, we get money lines, we get run lines, we get over-unders, and it's the best time of the year with all the college basketball going on, the baseball. It's so much fun. And not always easy to bet these games in April, especially the first week. You don't have a lot of data to go into, but it's just nice to have it back.
Absolutely. It is great to have it back. And do want to mention as well, the Should Have Bet More podcast is something that Will does as well. He does a tremendous job with that. You're able to find that podcast wherever you get this fine podcast. And well, I know does a great job on that front. And first things first, when it comes to taking a look at betting baseball in April, how do you operate, and just how much do you take out of things like spring training, what have you? Because I think the biggest difficulty with betting baseball in the month of April is just trying to figure out, okay, should I be looking at last year's numbers? Should I be looking at overall career form? Or when it comes to these rookies, should we be taking a look at guys that were either super hot or super cold during the spring? Because I do think that first month, if you do it right, it can be so highly profitable. And if you do it wrong, it can put you in a pretty mighty hole.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is to just kind of use my instincts, use a blend of everything you mentioned. Well, stuff from last year, stuff you just know about these guys in terms of from the minors or spring, and just kind of use your instincts and know that, hey, it's a long season. There's 162 games. That's the beauty of baseball. Once it starts, it goes until by the time baseball ends, we will be in like week 8 of next NFL season. We'll have an NFL draft. We'll have an NBA draft. We'll have an NBA. I mean, it's a long season. There's plenty of chances to bet, plenty of chances to make money. So you don't have to shove all in right away. You can bet a little lighter in terms of the amount of money you bet on each game. You can just bet fewer games. And you can just kind of get a feel for it. There's plenty of time to bet. And there's so many ways to bet now, too. You can bet inning to inning, almost pitch to pitch. You know, will there be a hit in this inning? Over under for strikeouts. There's just so many markets where I remember starting betting where it was just you wanted to bet on the game. You were either run line, money line, or over under. Now, man, there's so many different markets, too. I mean, you look at DraftKings, first team to 10 wins, last team to lose, most wins wins in April. I mean, it makes your head spin with all the markets to go over. So I would just say tread lightly. It's a tricky time of the year. Again, these pitchers are not always sharp. They're going from pitching in Arizona and Florida in spring training where it's 70, 80 degrees. And now you're putting them in, some of these Northeast or Midwest scenarios here where it's cold. It could be 30, 40 degrees. I mean, we've seen opening days where I can remember one Yankee opening day where there's snow coming down, and that's different for a pitcher than 80 degrees. So sometimes the command's not always there. They're not always built up. It's a different environment. So these pitchers don't go that deep into the games during the regular season, deep into the season, and in the postseason. A lot of these guys are 4 or 5 inning guys. So you're not going to see a lot of length, I wouldn't think, early. So keep that in mind and don't go too crazy too early, I think would be my best advice.
And I think that you bring up something so good as well, because I do think that now is a prime time to be able to fade some of these stud pitchers. Not that they're going to necessarily have like a bad start or something like that, because I mean, when you take a look at these guys that are going to be going on early in the season, you could have your insert stud pitcher go 5 to 6 scoreless innings, but how much this time of year do you take a look at some of these underdogs going up against a very highly touted pitcher, just because a lot of these guys start 1, start 2, they're not really going past 80 pitches, and I think that that's to the benefit of these underdogs, because even if you get the best out of that starting pitcher, if you're only getting them for 80 pitches rather than, say, 100, that's a full inning plus.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, it would either lend you to betting the underdog or just keep you off the game altogether, which can be just as valuable sometime. And I haven't seen the markets yet. I mean, we're still a couple days away, but I'd be interested to see the pitcher props and how much they're adjusted, where, Strider's usually going to be 7.5, 8.5. I wonder, are they going to hang a 4.5, a 5.5? He might be different because he's such a horse, but you get the idea where they're going to adjust. I remember last year, DeGrom, you get a really good number on him opening day where they put it like 6.5, and you knew he was only going 70, 80 pitches. So searching for the information too. Sometimes these managers, they'll actually be up front. It's not like football or basketball where they're not going to tell you their game plan. Sometimes they'll come out and tell you, hey, this guy's going to go maybe 65 to 80 pitches, and you can get an angle in terms of the strikeout prop. So, if you just go through the probables and you search pitch count for some of these guys, sometimes you'll find nothing, but sometimes you'll find a hidden gem where, hey, this guy's only going to go 60, 70 pitches. These managers and teams are ultra careful with these pitchers nowadays, especially with all the injuries. You're not going to see anybody throwing 100, 110 pitches on opening day. I wouldn't imagine. You're going to be very careful, 70, 80 pitches, just be very conservative. So maybe there's some value in terms of attacking the prop market in that way.
And you bring up something so great with baseball that you don't get in a lot of other sports, as Will Hill, who does great work over at VSIN, the Should Have Bet More podcast, and so much more is joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And that said, it feels like these managers, they're much more honest than coaches in other sports. Like when you get into college basketball, you don't know whether a guy's going to play or not. Teams are very hush-hush with regards to those injuries. You bet some college football, and you know as well as I do, trying to take a look at college football injuries, like good luck there. But in baseball, you mentioned it. If a manager says, hey, this guy is probably only going to go 70 pitches, they really aren't lying very often. Like I try to figure out the last time they have really been dishonest there. Now, sometimes you're just not going to get an announced pitcher, and that'll happen from time to time where you've got a little bit of a team of mystery that leads to games being off the board a little bit longer. But just in baseball, how much more value do you get with some of these comments that you see from these managers, what have you, rather than other sports? Because I think that that's one of the bigger advantages that we do get with baseball betting.
Yep, it's huge. I think the reason they do it is, you don't want to pull Garrett Cole after 6 innings, 80 pitches, just for example. I know he's hurt, but you don't want to pull him after a good start and then the bullpen blows it, and then people are criticizing you as the manager after the game, and then you say, well, he had a pitch count. You want to tell people up front, hey, he's got a pitch count. So if I pull him early, that's why. So that's why there's a little more, I think, honestly, the Yankees would actually be the one team where you can't really get a straight answer out of them, at least in terms of the injuries, where guys are fine, no big deal, they're only out a day or two, and the next thing you know, they're out for months or they need surgery. But for the most part, you get some honest answers out of these managers. And look, books, like I said, there's a lot to price. There's a lot of markets. And when you have this much to make lines on, there's no way to always do it all properly. I mean, not only do you have baseball and all the different things, over under bases, over under strikeouts, this, that. I mean, there's so many things. It's hard to do it all properly. And there's a little blurb about the Mets manager says that Jose Quintana is only going to throw 50 to 60 pitches. You as a bettor might get that before the books get it. So again, it helps to focus, and the more you can specialize, I would say the better. I think that for all the sports, I know, we're in content, so we can't really do that. But in terms of a better pay, I always suggest this for college basketball. Like I know people want to bet Duke and North Carolina and UConn, but if you just focused on like the Ivy League, you'd probably do pretty well. You'd probably just, really specialize in that and have a good year just following all the ins and outs of those teams. I think the same for baseball. Like if you could just focus on one team or one division, you'll probably get a better idea day to day of like, all right, they used the bullpen a lot yesterday, or, this team is hot, this team's not. So you can specialize too. That might be a good way to approach it, which I know like we can't do it. We're in content. A lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to bet every team, but I do think that's an advantage bettors have.
Yep, certainly. And it's a big reason why I stick to a little bit more full games rather than first fives, because I do take a look at these bullpens quite a bit. And I do think that that's going to be a big advantage this time of year, because sometimes even when you bet a first five with some of these guys, as we were alluding to, being on these pitch counts, they might not even make it to 5 innings. So I think that that is very much to your advantage as well. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to slice it. And well, we've been taking a look at a lot of general things for this upcoming MLB season. And as we're doing this, the opening day games, they're going on as we speak. But that said, coming into the season, just in your research, was there maybe a team or two that you've identified that maybe you're a little bit higher / lower on rather than the market? It doesn't even need to be a season win total or anything like that, but just perhaps a team that in general you think that there might be a little bit of value on, either betting or fading towards being part of the season.
Yeah, I think Cleveland might be better than people think. That's always a winnable division. Both the Centrals are always just sort of where it's kind of wide open. And look, I know there's a lot of hype about the Royals. The Tigers at 81.5 seems a little high. I kind of like the Cleveland. I love their pitching. They're very good at developing the pitching staff. I mean, I love the guys like Williams and Bybee. You throw Bieber in the mix. I guess he spent some time at Driveline this past offseason and gotten the velocity up. Obviously, the guy at the back end of the bullpen, Class A, is as good as anyone. Ramirez is a legitimate just MVP candidate. Now, they don't have a lot around him. They need to kind of play small ball and, steal bases, use their speed, things like that. But in that division with that pitching at 79.5, to me, that's a 500 or above team. It'll be interesting with Francona out, who was more of an old school guy, and they get a little more analytically savvy, I would think, with Vogt, the new manager. To me, them at plus 250 to make the playoffs, over 3-1 to win the division, over the wins. If you want to get frisky and pick them to the American League, figuring, hey, they could win a division and maybe they go right to the division round, and that's a good scenario for them. But Cleveland is a team I like. Team I just can't stand it. This is not anything profound. I don't understand how the Rockies get anybody out this year. I think the Rockies' opponents' team total over, the baseball Twitter has flocked to, Patrick Corbin. Anytime he's pitching, people just, team total over, first 5 team total over against Corbin. I think the Rockies pitchers will be the same way. I think, you're going to see some 7.5, 8.5. When the Dodgers go into Coors Field, I don't know what you make that team total, how you make it high enough, especially as the season goes on and the pitching gets worn down, the bullpen gets worn down. I mean, the Dodgers are going to go in there with that lineup and basically score 9-10 runs every single time, barring something unforeseen. So to me, the Rockies are in a division where the Giants have really good pitching with Webb, Snell, Harrison, Hicks. That's a good rotation. The Diamondbacks are in that division. They made the World Series. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. The Padres, you figure, have a little positive regression coming their way with all the close losses last year. The Rockies might be looking at like a historically 52, 53 win team. The Rockies under, I know it's low, but plus money to have the fewest wins, under wins. I think the Rockies are going to be just absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, and that's always a team that's so interesting to take a look at, because it's really across all sports with regards to Colorado teams. You can look at the Nuggets in basketball. You're able to take a look at the Denver Broncos when it comes to football, certainly college basketball, Colorado State. I want you to look at the Rockies a little bit different away from home rather than at home, because when the Rockies hit the road, I always notice this, year in and year out, they're like one of the worst hitting teams in all of baseball. So you're talking about taking a look at team total overs, and I think that that's a big key, because I could see a lot of road games going under, not because the Rockies pitching is any good, but just because this offense in general, when they leave Coors Field, they leave their superpowers behind them, and they struggle to get to 3 runs in a lot of those games.
Yep, exactly. And you've heard hitters say, hey, the curveball, when I'm playing at Coors, the curveball breaks a certain way at home, and then on the road it breaks a different way where it just doesn't bite as much at home. And that's just, man, it's almost like you need to field 2 different teams because their outfield is so big. You have to field a certain team to cover the outfield. I start to wonder, they've been around 30-something years now. I start to wonder if they can ever feel like a legitimately consistent winning team with their challenges that playing at that altitude provides. I mean, they did make that World Series in 2007. That was a little fluky, but look, that was a good season. They were actually pretty good. 5-6 years ago now with Marquez, they were in that wild card game against them. So they've had their moments, but man, it just seems like it's very hard to sustain success with all the obstacles that come with fielding a team in Coors.
I remember that quite well. They lost to the Milwaukee Brewers in 2018, and ever since then, man, it has not necessarily been great for them. As Will Hill, who he is great, he does tremendous work over here at VSIN He is joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And then just want to give you the floor here in terms of any futures that you might have placed here in the offseason. I personally am not too much of a futures player, so don't feel bad if you don't have a ton in the portfolio right now. But is there anything that really caught your eye and anything that you just decided, hey, you know what? I see a little bit of value here. I'm going to fire in on it.
I love having these futures. It's fun to get big numbers. You get action all year. I look at the awards, especially where I've done well. Like I had Snell last year. I remember I bet Snell the day of the draft, the NBA draft, at 50-1 to win Cy Young. And look, nice. Mitch Moss at the network had 151, but a lot of people have better numbers than me. I look at the market for some of these. I think with betting being more prevalent, more popular, they're really kind of getting you with these prices where they're not doing you any favors. I mean, just look at MVP. Acuna is 5-1, Judge is 5-1. Like they're kind of just taking their ball and going home. The Cy Young, Cole Reagan's the guy a lot of people like. Nice little sleeper. Maybe you take him for the Cy Young as a deep sleeper. He's 9-1. Tarek Skubal, again, sleeper, 9-1. I mean, we're talking single-digit odds for these guys. It's just insane. It's wide open now without Cole in the mix, and Cease is in a different division. But I don't know, 9-1 on those guys. It just feels like you're really getting the short end of the stick with those prices. So I don't know. There's a ton that I love. I do think Rodon could have a bounce-back season for the Yankees, but again, 35-1. Like I just don't see a ton of value in these. And look, that's the good thing about baseball. These prices aren't going anywhere. You can get long odds on these guys throughout the season. I mean, you could have gotten the Rangers, Diamondbacks to face each other in the World Series before the playoffs, right before they started, at 150, 200-1. So the value isn't going anywhere. I wouldn't suggest jumping on anything right now in terms of the awards, the futures. I just think a lot of these prices look a little short.
Yep, I agree with you. The one that I took a look at in terms of the Cy Young market, Brian Bayo at 50-1, with him being an opening day starter for the Red Sox. Now, that ballpark might just potentially completely kill him because, man, trying to be able to keep the ball in the park at Fenway, that's always a little bit of difficulty, but you're looking for a little bit of a deep sleeper. I don't think that that's the world's worst look, but I'm in agreement with you. When you're getting guys like Cole Reagans and company at less than 10-1, that's just a relatively rough situation. But what always puts us in a good situation is getting you aboard, Will. You do amazing work here at the network. I know you do some work over there at Fox Sports. You have the Should Have Bet More podcast and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep, you mentioned it. Should Have Bet More podcast, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Bear Bets podcast. We'll be doing a Sweet 16 podcast coming out soon. I'm on VSiN throughout the week on Gil's show and some of the other shows. So catch me there at Not The Will Hill on Twitter. Appreciate you having me on, man. Thanks. Always helps me with my prep to be able to listen to your show. So I appreciate the help all year with the college hoops and with the baseball.
And we always appreciate the work of Will. He does such a good job here at the network and really just across all sports. Is such a good handicapper, and every single time he joins the show, feel like we get a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Will for joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be able to get Will Hill aboard. He does such an amazing job handicapping so many different things, and at VSiN, I mean, he really is a jack of all trades, taking a look at college basketball, taking a look at baseball, football, and so much more. And every single time he joins this show, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Will for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Friday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GN_41. We are going to be going in rotation order. This is where we go with the National League games first, then the American League games. If we would have interleague games, those would be at the bottom, but at the bottom, you're actually going to have the two rained out games between the Brewers and the Mets and the Braves and the Phillies. They're added to the bottom because they were unexpected games. You're going to find this with doubleheaders. They always put these at the bottom because the board is set prior to the games getting set for the previous day, so they do have to add these at the bottom. So that's a big reason why you're going to be seeing early games being the last ones that I hit on the show. But let's get things started with 967, 968 on the card. It is the Miami Marlins, and they're going to be playing us the Pittsburgh Pirates. Martin Perez goes for the Buccos, and AJ Puck, he is going to be on the bump for Miami, and Miami is a favorite of between minus 125 to a minus 130. Meanwhile, between plus 110 to a plus 116 is your number on Pittsburgh. 8 is the total. Unders between minus 110 to a minus 115. The overs between minus 105 to minus 110, and did set my total at 7.4. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. Now, the big fear that you do have with the under is that they played an extra inning game yesterday, so that did burn through a lot of the bullpen pieces that both of these teams have, but I do think the Marlins have a nice edge here. I did set them at a minus 142. I'm going to be willing to ride with them on the money line, and really, this is just a big giant fade of Martin Perez. Martin Perez got destroyed when he was pitching away from home a season ago, and he just gives up a lot of hard contact in general. He gives up about 1.7 home runs per 9 innings is what he gave up a season ago. Now, I will say, this is a very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Miami. That should be able to help him out quite a bit, but the command is a little bit wobbly. He only gives you about 6.5, 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, so has never truly been a swing and miss guy, and he got relegated to the bullpen when he was with the Texas Rangers a season ago. Not really a whole bunch of plus stuff. Meanwhile, for AJ Puck, he is trying to make the transition from being a closer / relief piece into being a rock-solid starter, and you take a look at what he was able to do in spring training, and he was able to do a nice job. He was still getting his strikeouts. Certainly, the length, I don't think is going to be there for him early on, but he is backed up by a Miami Marlins lineup that you've got a few guys that are okay for this team. This is a team that is going to be hitting for a lot of contact, not necessarily a lot of power. Jake Berger last season, he was very rock solid in his time between the Miami Marlins and the Chicago Cubs, was able to hit a grand total of 34 home runs, so he's your big thumper along with Josh Bell, but Tim Anderson, if he's able to find that form that he had a few seasons ago, as this is a former batting champion that has fallen on some tough times, to say the least, if he's able to find that form, that's going to be big at the top of the lineup for a Miami Marlins team that they did lose Ori Soler in the offseason, one of their best power bats, so they're going to be looking to Jazz Chisholm to be able to give this team a little bit more offense. You had Luis Arias go for 0 for 6 in the first game of the season. We're not going to see that a whole heck of a lot, though. I will say, with Arias, he did have a little bit of a tough time of it towards the back half of the season last year, so that is something to be very mindful of, but I do think that the Marlins are going to be able to get a little bit more power out of guys like Avicio Garcia and company than they did a season ago. Meanwhile, for the Pittsburgh Pirates, it's all about, can these young guys be able to come into form? Oniel Cruz, he had a home run to lead off the season in the game yesterday, so that was big for him. Henry Davis is a former number 1 overall pick. He's a good professional hitter that I do think has a lot of upside. Ke'Bryan Hayes is a guy that's able to move the line. Then you do have that widely veteran in Andrew McCutchen, but certainly with the Pirates, you still do have quite a bit of question mark, especially at the bottom of the fold. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they're currently dealing with a little bit of an injury to David Bednar, one of their better bullpen pieces. I do like some of the guys that you still have. Someone like an Jose Hernandez is able to give you some solid innings. Aroldis Chapman, I know that he's been dealing with a few ailments as well, and you saw just the, shall we say, smorgasbord of different pitchers yesterday as well for the Pittsburgh Pirates, as they only got about 5 2/3 innings out of Mitch Keller, so you had to have a lot of guys, including Chapman, come out in that game. But that said, it's a Miami Marlins team that's very spent with regards to their bullpen, as well as they had to have Mr. Cronin, I believe it's Declan Cronin, throw 3 innings for the team yesterday, and it is a bullpen that I think is going to be okay for the Miami Marlins. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be amazing. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be terrible. Uskar Brazobin is someone that I liked a season ago. You've got Andrew Nardi, who I believe that last season he was able to record an ERA that was sub 3.5, got lit up in the game yesterday against the Pittsburgh Pirates, but I think that he's going to be able to bounce back in a pretty big way. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I do think that there's still some question marks with the starting pitching for the team. Throwing out there Martin Perez, not necessarily ideal, even though AJ Puck, I do think that he's going to give you a limited amount of pitches in this one. Despite that, I'm going to be willing to ride with the Miami Marlins in what I think is going to be a lower scoring game, because with Martin Perez, him pitching in a bigger ballpark, I think is going to be his friend. I did set the Marlins at a minus 142. I'm willing to ride with them on the money line. Did set my total at 7.4, so also looking at this total under 969, 970 on the betting board. It is the Colorado Rockies on the road facing off against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Merrill Kelly is on the bump for the Saints. Cal Quantrill is on the bump for Colorado, and Colorado is an underdog of anywhere between plus 185 and plus 195, anywhere between minus 220 to minus 225. Your number on the Diamondbacks, and You're looking at the run line price, by the way, of the Diamondbacks. That's between minus 108 to a minus 115, and total on this game is 8.5. Over is minus 120, and the under is even. I initially set this total at an 8.1, and I have to jack it up a little bit more. I did set it more around an 8.3, so I still do like the under, but made a little bit of an adjustment after what we saw yesterday with, my goodness gracious, the Colorado Rockies getting completely lambasted. They gave up 16 runs in the first 3 innings of the game, and I think that Cal Quantrill is going to be a little bit better than our good friend in one Kyle Freeland was yesterday. 10 runs in 2 1/3 innings, and then you had 6 runs given up in a third of an inning by Anthony Molina, so you had to throw out there all the long guys in the Rockies bullpen, but sometimes you'd rather get destroyed rather than lose a 1-run game if you're these teams, which means that the Rockies are able to store away more of their trustworthy bullpen pieces. Like, you did not see some of these guys like a Tyler Kinley go into the game yesterday, though. It's still a Rockies bullpen that's going to be rocky, to say the least, this season, going up against an Arizona Diamondbacks lineup that I don't think that we're going to be seeing them putting up 16 runs on the regular, as every single one of the starters except for Corbin Carroll have multiple hits. That's absolutely insane. I do like this lineup. Lourdes Gurriel, Ketel Marte, these are guys that are able to move the line. And Eugenio Suarez. He last season was a little bit up and down with the Seattle Mariners. He had just 22 home runs. I do expect him to be able to hit a little bit better in this ballpark than he was able to in Seattle, but got a 35 home run hitter in Christian Walker. And for the Colorado Rockies, they just year in and year out typically have the biggest home run road splits with regards to their hitting. But for the Colorado Rockies, good news is they aren't going from elevation to elevation quite yet, because they were out there in Arizona for spring training, so they're not dealing with the sort of shifts in geography, topography, whatever you want to call it, quite yet, so that's actually to their advantage a little bit more in terms of hitting. You've got Nolan Jones, who supplied 20 home runs, was able to do a solid job moving the line a season ago. Elias Diaz, we remember him being able to win MVP of the All-Star game last season, so they do have a few okay pieces, but that said, this is an Arizona Diamondbacks bullpen that they themselves are going to be relatively well rested. It's a bullpen that last season was much maligned by people much like myself, but that said, Miguel Castro, Luis Frias, they're okay pieces. They're not great, they're not terrible. I expect a little bit of bounce back from guys like Scott McGough, Joe Mantiply, a pair of guys that got a little bit unlucky out there in the bullpen last season. And the big key is, are you going to be able to get a good season out of someone like a Kyle Nelson, who was very good towards the front half of the season, back half of the season? Things did go a little bit awry on them, but I do take a look at this ordeal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think that they just completely outclass this Colorado Rockies team. Having Corbin Carroll be the lone guy that really didn't give you multiple hits yesterday, I think that that's very telling of where this Arizona Diamondbacks team is. And for Cal Quantrill, he's very much a pitch-to-contact guy. He was getting right around about 5.5 to 6 strikeouts per 9 innings last season with the Cleveland Guardians. This isn't the world's worst ballpark for him. I've noticed that Arizona's been playing a little bit more pitcher-friendly in recent years. That was not the case yesterday, but that said, for Cal Quantrill, he does a relatively solid job in terms of his command, but we've noticed him in recent years just have a little bit of issues towards the beginning part of the season, and going up against someone in Merrill Kelly that he does have very demonstrative home and road splits. You look at him ever since he got to Arizona, his ERA is a full point lower when he's at home throughout his career rather than in a road setting, and last season for Merrill Kelly was really able to fill it up with the swing and miss stuff, about 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, only giving up about a home run per 9. The walks were a little bit up, but I do think that he's going to be able to tame these Rockies bats. I did set my total at an 8.3, so here at an 8.5, I do like the under with the Diamondbacks. We'll only go up to minus 120 on this run line, so looking at the run line of the Diamondbacks, and I'm going to be diving in on this total under as well. 971, 972 on the betting board. The San Francisco Giants hit the road. They're facing off against the Slam Diego Padres, as it is going to be one Joe Musgrove on the bump for the Pods, and you've got on the bump for the San Francisco Giants, Kyle Harrison, with the Giants being an underdog of anywhere between plus 126 and plus 135, between minus 138 to minus 150. That number on the Padres, 7.5 is the total, over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. 138 is the max I'm willing to lay with the San Diego Padres. We'll need to see if we can get a little bit of late night line movement, because I am right now pretty much right at that point, so I'm going to be waiting to see what we get overnight, but I did set the San Diego Padres at a minus 138. If you're looking more at the run line, you're finding that for the Padres as high as a plus 154, as low as a plus 140. I just can't do it with how low scoring I think that this game is going to be. Set my total at 6.9, and when you do get lower scoring games, it just diminish the run line just a little bit. So circumstance where at the current number, I'd be willing to lay the minus 138 with the Padres. I am not willing to go a single penny more though. Kyle Harrison was able to really put up some nice swing and miss numbers towards the back half of the season last year for the San Francisco Giants. He's going to be very fresh in this one. I do wonder if he wears down towards the back half of the season, but gave you north of 9 strikeouts per 9 innings and did so with relatively good command. It was a small 34.5 inning sample size last season, but just 11 walks in 34 and 2/3 innings, and multiple starts of his came against the LA Dodgers. He had to go on the road against the Philadelphia Phillies in his MLB debut, so he faced off against relatively good competition, going against someone in Joe Musgrove who had a rough spring training. He got roughed up in that first start in the Seoul series in South Korea, but now he's able to return home where he's had a lot of success. And for Joe Musgrove, it took him a little bit of time to get going last year as well because he was dealing with injury towards the beginning part of the season and the back half of the campaign when he was actually out there pitching because he got shut down for the final month and a half, 2 months of the season. He was really rocking and rolling last 10 starts, had a sub 275 ERA, but this is a Padres unit that I just feel like they've got the better offense in this ordeal. You've got a guy in Xander Bogaerts who I do think is going to be able to refine the just sort of magic they had with the Boston Red Sox last year. He had a 285 with about 20 home runs. He was a little bit down, but you got Manny Machado, you got Fernando Tatis Jr., just two guys are able to rake, two guys that do a nice job being able to both get on base and hit for power. Ha-Seong Kim, he's one of the more versatile players that you're able to find in all of baseball, and what was such an issue for the Padres last season was finding a solid catcher, and Luis Campusano, 3-game sample size, he's been able to do a nice job hitting north of a 300. I think that he's a clear upgrade for the team. Meanwhile, with the Giants, they were pretty much the least efficient offense in terms of run creation in all of baseball towards the back half of the season last year. You pick up Matt Chapman, that's going to be able to help out. And Michael Conforto, it looks like he's getting back to form. He had a home run opening day, he had 3 hits, but last season he provided the team with 15 home runs, and that's just it with the San Francisco Giants. It's really a whole is greater than some of its parts sort of team. Michael Conforto, Mike Yastrzemski, Thairo Estrada, these are guys that are going to hit for like 15 to 20 home runs. They'll hit for a decent average, but it's not necessarily great. But now they bring in Jorge Soler. That's going to be able to help fortify things a little bit. I do question Jung-Ho Lee coming over from the KBO. I think it might take him a year. We saw that with, as a matter of fact, on the flip side, Ha-Seong Kim. And for the San Francisco Giants, it's a bullpen that I think is going to be a little bit better than it was yesterday, where you just saw a complete explosion from Luke Jackson. I think they gave up 3 runs or something while getting 1 out, but I do like this bullpen. Overall, Rogers squared is relatively solid. Ryan Walker, when he's out there relieving games, he's a nice reliever. You're probably going to be seeing some piggybacking with regards to this Giants team. Probably not in the case of Harrison, but they do have a relatively solid bullpen. And for the Padres, even without Josh Hader in the fold, you bring in Aniel De Los Santos. I like what he's able to bring to the table for the team. Robert Suarez was much better towards the back half of the season. Heck, if you need him, Pedro Avila, because they were able to acquire Dylan Cease. If you need him towards the back half of the bullpen / as a number 5 starter, he's relatively solid along with Wandy Peralta as well. So I do take a look at this spot. I do think that for the San Francisco Giants might be a little bit of a tough series. We saw the Padres really be able to put a hurting on them towards the back half of that game. I do think that things going to be a little bit more tame in the bullpen than we saw in game number 1. So it is a circumstance where I'm looking at the under. Petco Park, one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks in all of baseball. So I did set my total at 6.9. I like the under. And with the Padres, set them as a minus 138 favorite. Not willing to go any further than minus 138 on the money line, but at current numbers, we'll be looking at that minus 138 to go along with the under. 973 and 974 on the betting board. It is the LA Dodgers. They play host to the St. Louis Cardinals. Zach Thompson goes for the Cards, and you got Bobby Miller on the bump for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are anywhere between minus 225 to minus 245 favorites, and we're between plus 195 and plus 208. Your number on the St. Louis Cardinals. Mostly seeing 8.5s on the board for the total, with the over at a minus 120 to a minus 125. Unders between even and plus 105. Seeing a straight 9 pop up as well. The unders minus 120, overs even. And if you're looking at that Dodgers run line, it's between minus 115 to a minus 120. Set the Dodgers run line at a minus 122. Now, for the Cardinals, we're starting to get into that buy point of their money line. I set them at a plus 206, so I would need at least a plus 207. So it's decision time for me between the run line of the Dodgers and the money line of the Cardinals. And personally, I'm going to ride with the run line of the Dodgers. I'm willing to lay up to a minus 120 there. I just take a look at this Dodgers lineup, and it's so incredible going up against a Cardinals team that they just don't have a lot of pitching this year. The fact that they had Miles Michaelis out there for an opening day start tells me everything that I need to know about the St. Louis Cardinals pitching staff, and really, other than Ryan Helsley, you had nobody else in the bullpen that provided a sub-3.5 ERA last season. They're going to be looking to guys like a Riley O'Brien, Andre Palante and company to be able to hold down the fort. Giovanni Gallegos was relatively rough last season. Now, I do like the acquisition of Andrew Kittredge, but it's a bad bullpen trying to back up a guy in Zach Thompson who I think he's got some upside. I think that overall this is someone that can turn into a relatively solid starter. He was mostly a bullpen piece last season, so I want to see what he's able to do in a full year of starting, but I mean, he was able to give the team north of 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. Command is really lacking. He had north of 3.5 walks per 9 innings, but all in all, he showed some good signs. Meanwhile, for Bobby Miller, he came up to the big leagues last season and was a completed under dynamo. He's able to give you about 8.5 to 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, limits hard contact, pitches quite well at home. He's only giving up about 2.3, 2.4 walks per 9 innings. The fielding independent honestly showed that he was a little bit unlucky towards the back half of the season last year. Meanwhile, you've got a Dodgers lineup that, I mean, you don't have an easy out in the lineup. You've got Freddie Freeman, who last year hit north of a 300, was a fringe MVP candidate. You've got Mookie Betts, who's already got a pair of home runs. You've got Shohei Ohtani, who's going to be able to hit a bunch of home runs. He's had a lot of warning track power recently, and you have to wonder if the off-the-field sort of things linger on a little bit, but Will Smith is getting jiggy with it. Like the Dodgers, they've got so many guys that they just find a way to be able to reach base, and Dodger Park is a very pitcher-friendly ballpark, but yet the Dodgers, they put up 5+ runs per game pretty much on the regular. They pick up Teoscar Hernandez, and with the Dodgers, it's not just the deep ball with them. They were number one in terms of walks drawn on a per-at-bat basis last season, and it's a St. Louis Cardinals team that you've got some relatively good bats in the lineup. Lars Nootbaar is someone that is currently on the injured list, so that does hurt them a little bit, but you've got Nolan Arenado, you've got Paul Goldschmidt, pair of guys that give you 30+ home runs on the regular. They do a nice job being able to reach base. Nolan Gorman needs to be a little bit more consistent in terms of getting on base, but someone who was able to slug out 25+ home runs last season. Had my question marks with Mason Wynn. He was awful when he was in the fold last season, and I do think that's going to take him some time to be able to develop, but these young outfielders, like a Jordan Walker, like an Alec Burleson, I like what they're able to bring to the table as well, so I do think that the Cardinals are going to be able to put up some runs, despite the fact that they go up against a Dodgers bullpen that last year was number one in the league in terms of bullpen ERA, but they do lose some of these guys, like Caleb Ferguson from the season ago. Evan Phillips is still a very good reliever for the team. Wouldn't doubt it if they utilize Gavin Stone a little bit in some long relief as well. You're probably going to be looking at Danny Hudson throwing some big-time innings for the team, with Ryan Yarbrough being a bit of a long guy, but I do think that all in all, the Dodgers just slug their way to victory. I think that Zach Thompson starting to figure it out, but I think it's going to take him some time, and he's backed up by a rough bullpen, so I do like the Dodgers on the run line, set them as a minus 122 on that, semi-total 9.4, so also like the over. 975, 976 on the betting board. The Toronto Blue Jays are on the road facing off against the Tampa Bay Rays. Aaron Savali goes for the Rays, and Chris Bassett as the hook, line, and sinker for Toronto. And Toronto is a underdog in this ordeal of anywhere between even money and plus 111, between minus 115 to a minus 121. Your number on the Rays. Total on this game is 8. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. And this up by total 7.7. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under with the Tampa Bay Rays. A little bit of a rough go of it on opening day, but I do think that Aaron Savali is going to finally be able to get what he deserves, because I take a look at Aaron Savali, and year in and year out, he's either like pitching a 1.5 lower on his ERA than his fielding independent, or his fielding independent is a point lower than his actual ERA. He's either getting super lucky or super unlucky, and for Aaron Savali, the swing and miss stuff last season, it was way up. Last year, he was able to get a strikeouts per 9 rate that was well north of 9, so he was able to do a nice job on that front. Did struggle a little bit when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays after he got off to a really nice start with the Cleveland Guardians, but his fielding independent was actually higher with the Guardians. Meanwhile, his ERA was higher, but his fielding independent was lower with the Tampa Bay Rays. Meanwhile, for Chris Bassett, he really struggled with the pitch clock towards the beginning part of the season last year, but he was able to close out last season really with a flurry. He gave up 2 runs or fewer in 5 out of his last 6 starts. I liked what I saw from him on that front. Now, he was a little bit lucky. If you take a look at the fielding independent numbers, it was about a full point higher than his 3.60 ERA. Part of that was that he was walking more guys than normal. He had north of 3 walks per 9 innings, giving up about 1.2, 1.3 home runs per 9 innings, but really did figure some stuff out towards the back half of the season. But with the Blue Jays, do have a few question marks in terms of this bullpen as well. A lot of the guys that they acquired at the deadline line last season. They're now out of the fold. I like what Yimi Garcia is able to bring to the table. Bowden Francis is a very solid reliever, as well as Chad Green as well, but got a few rolls of the dice out there. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, they just do nothing but fortify their bullpen year in and year out. You lose someone like an Andrew Kittredge, well, you pick up Jacob Ogiespack, who's going to be able to do a relatively solid job for this team. You bring in Phil Maton, who I like that acquisition. Jason Adam, Pete Fairbanks, these guys are very rock solid towards the back half of games. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, you've got a team that does a good job of being able to move the line. Jose Siri, if he can be better at just being able to get on base consistently, because he had 20 plus home runs last season, that'll be big for the team. Meanwhile, Harold Ramirez won a batting title last season. Randy Arozarena does a good job being able to find a way on base. He's able to give you 20 plus home runs. They pick up in the offseason someone underrated from the Seattle Mariners and Jose Calabreo, who doesn't have a lot of power, but he finds a way to be able to move the line, get on base. Ahmed Rosario, I think, is a little bit of an upside piece for the team as well. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, the loss of Brandon Belt is going to be impacting this lineup just a little bit. You've got Bo Bichette, you've got Vlad Guerrero Jr., pair of guys that they should be hitting close to 300 on a year in and year out basis. Guerrero, I think he's going to be able to bounce back after last season. For his standards was down. Anyone not named Vlad Guerrero Jr. would gladly take 26 home runs, right around about 94 RBI, a 345 on base. For him, that's a little bit of an issue, though. They do pick up Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I have my question marks there, but Justin Turner down for what? I like what he's able to bring to the table for this team as well. And don't call his name Alejandro Kirk. Does a good job of being a reach base as well. So it's an interesting spot, because with Tampa Bay, it is one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks out there in baseball. I think that the Rays, with their bullpen, it's going to be able to find a way to be able to get it done against a guy in Chris Bassett, who I think is going to give you a relatively solid start, but with Aaron Savali getting more strikeouts, I do think that it's going to stymie the Blue Jays in this ordeal. Did set the Rays at a minus 136. I like the money line, and somebody told us 7.7, so you're at the 8. I also like the under. 977, 978 on the betting board. It is the Houston Astros. They play us the New York Yankees. Carlos Rodon is on the bump for the Yankees. Christian Javier is on the bump for the Astros. Astros do find themselves as a minus 126 to a minus 135 favorite, and between plus 114 to plus 120 is your number on the Yankees. 9 is the total. Over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. Did somebody total at an 8.6? I'm going to be looking at the under for Christian Javier. He had a little bit of a rough spring training, and Carlos Rodon's ERA during spring training wasn't bad. You could tell that he was giving up some hard contact, though, but I do think that both of these bullpens are going to be able to save you on an under. I set my total at 8.6. Looking at the under, the Astros, they pick up Josh Hader in the offseason, which they didn't need to use him yesterday because they made like your buddy at the bar and could not close out that game prior to getting to him, but I do overall like this bullpen. You've got Ryan Presley, who's just amazing in the 8/9th inning, wherever you want to throw him. You've got someone in Brian Abreu, who's a really good bullpen piece as well. And for the New York Yankees, they were towards the top of the league in terms of their bullpen ERA last season, as well as you've got so many guys like Clay Holmes, Jonathan Loaizaga, along Tommy Kahnle that you feel good about towards the back half of the bullpen. Ian Hamilton is able to give you some good innings as well. And for the New York Yankees, the offense came to life towards the back half of the game yesterday. You have to have that feeling that Juan Soto is really going to be able to elevate the team, because with the New York Yankees, when they had Aaron Judge go down, he was pretty much the entirety of the offense. Now, if Judge goes down, yeah, it would still be really rough for the team, but at the same time, now you at the very least have a little bit more of something. Gleyber Torres is a guy that had 20 plus home runs, moved the line solid last season. Anthony Rizzo coming back as big as well, as it was just mysterious as to what happened with him. Got off to a nice start to the season. He then sustained a concussion that nobody knew about, and then just went straight down the toilet bowl from there. Oswaldo Cabrera had a nice day yesterday, but I do have my question marks towards the back half of the lineup there. And for the Astros, it used to be the question mark of Martin Maldonado at the catcher spot. Now with Yanier Diaz in there, he had 3 hits yesterday. That really fortifies that spot now. With some of these Astros hitters, they just traditionally get off to rough starts. Alex Bregman is always going to hit like 200 in the first month of the season. That's just the way that he operates. Jose Altuve can sometimes be a little bit touch and go, but Yordan Alvarez looked really good in the spring. Kyle Tucker does a nice job moving the line, hits for some good power. And the Houston Astros, they're one of the best teams at not striking out as well, and that has always been the game of Carlos Rodon. Carlos Rodon very much relies upon swing and miss stuff, and his stuff, it looked better this spring than it did look last season, but you could tell that he was really struggling last year, and I do think that for Carlos Rodon, we do have to have our sort of pause with him. Meanwhile, for Christian Javier, he was still getting some okay swings and misses towards the beginning part of the season last year. Waned as the season went along, was starting to give up some big-time hard contact. I do think that what we saw in the spring is encouraging enough to think that he's going to be able to get the job done here in this ordeal. It is a circumstance where I set the Astros at a minus 140. 144. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Don't want the run line here because I do think that both bullpens give a strong effort in this game. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to be taking the money line of the Houston Astros. 979, 980 on the betting board. It is the Oakland A's, and they play off the Cleveland Guardians. Logan Allen goes for the Guardians, and Ross Stripling is on the bump for Oakland. Oakland finds themselves as a home underdog, anywhere between plus 115, seeing as high as plus 125 out there on Oakland. Meanwhile, you're laying between minus 130 to minus 142 with Cleveland. 7.5 is the total. Over is between minus 115 to minus 120. Under is between even to minus 105. And we saw like a 20 to 25 cent line move yesterday on Oakland. Why, I have absolutely no idea, and I am not going to be willing to take the A's in this spot. I set the Guardians at a minus 168. It becomes a question of, do I want the money line? Do I want the run line? Right now, with Cleveland laying a run after, you're able to get a plus 120 to a plus 125. Personally, I'm going to be willing to rock with the run line. For Ross Stripling, he's not a terrible pitcher, and the Oakland A's, I mean, they picked up they picked up Alex Wood. Their starting pitching situation, it's a little bit better than it was last season, but what the heck are you going to be able to get out of this offense? They're going up against a really good Cleveland Guardians pitching staff in general, not just the starters, but the bullpen. And Zach Galoff, he was relatively okay last season. I do think that J.J. Bleday is going to be able to take a stride forward. You've got someone like a Brent Rooker, who, when he's away from home, he hits a whole heck of a lot better than he does at home. And you're just able to find that with the Oakland A's in general. None of these guys like hitting in their ballpark. They hit as a collective less than 220 when they were at home. They were the lowest runs per game of any American League team at home last season. Now, it is a very much a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but I mean, what can you expect out of guys like J.D. Davis, Shea Langoliers? These are not guys that really move the line. They rely upon power, and you just can't use that power out there in Oakland, where with the Cleveland Guardians, they don't have a lot of power hitters. You're going to be relying upon Josh Naylor, along with Jose Ramirez, to be able to drive in the home run ball, but at the same time, they do have guys that are able to move the line, like Andres Jimenez. Last year, he was a little bit down, but 2 seasons ago, he was able to do a solid job, giving the team about a 297 average and a 370 on base. Stephen Kwan does a solid job of being able to move the line for the team. Austin Hedges is a complete just albatross. The entire catcher spot going to be a little bit rough for the Guardians, to say the least, but even the former Oakland A, Ramon Laureano, I think that he'll be able to move the line okay for this Cleveland Guardians team. And then for the Guardians, you've got that nice 8th, 9th inning duo that they didn't have to go to yesterday that is going to be so formidable in James Karinchak, along with Emmanuel Clase. Eli Morgan is a relatively good reliever, and for the Oakland A's, they're not going to be the worst bullpen in the league. They're probably going to be in the bottom 5, though. You're staring at guys like Michael Kelly, Lucas Erceg, who are going to be getting big-time innings. Danny Jimenez is someone I do think has a little bit of upside, but I just take a look at this entire bullpen, not sure really what to make out of it. And for Ross Stripling, he last year recorded an ERA that was well north of 5. He had a nice career renaissance with Toronto, just went straight down the toilet bowl with San Francisco last season, always does a good job in terms of his command. He just doesn't give you a lot of swings and misses. He only had about 7.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, and against a Cleveland Guardians team that really doesn't strike out at all, they do a solid job being able to put the ball in play. I think that this is going to be death by a million cuts for the Guardians. And Logan Allen, this guy is the real deal. I liked what I saw from him a season ago. He was able to record for the team about a 3.81 ERA. Fielding independent, honestly, was right on par with that. He got about 8.5 to 9 punch-outs per 9 innings. The walks are an issue. He was giving up right around about 3 or so walks per 9 innings. You could tell that as the season wore on, he wore down a little bit as towards the beginning part of the season. He was very, very good for the team. He gave up 3 earned runs or fewer in each of his first 7 total appearances. I do think that Logan Allen could be able to take it to an Oakland A's team that is one of the worst offenses in all of baseball. Did semi-total at 7.7. Here at a 7.5. I do like the over, as you just don't have a lot of pitching in general for the Oakland A's. We saw yesterday the Cleveland Guardians get the job done 8-0, and I don't think that the A's get shut out 2 straight days, so I think that they can contribute like 2 or 3 runs to be able to help out with this total. But looking at the over, and I'm going to take the run line of the Cleveland Guardians at a plus number, and then personally more of around a minus 165 on the money line. 981, 982 on the betting board. The Seattle Mariners play host to the Boston Red Sox. Nick Pivetta goes for the Sox, and George Kirby is on the bump for Seattle. And Seattle does find themselves as a favorite of anywhere between minus 154 to a minus 162, between plus 136 and plus 145 is your number on Boston. 7 to 7.5 is the total on 7. Overs between minus 110 to a minus 120. Unders anywhere between even and minus 110. And when it comes to the 7.5, under is minus 120, and the over is even. I did set my total at 6.9. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. For Nick Pivetta, he actually really found it towards the back half of the season last year. You could tell that when they utilized an opener from, he was very much in his comfort zone. And for Nick Pivetta, if you look at his tenure with the Boston Red Sox, his ERA is well north of 0.6 points lower when he's on the road rather than when he is at home. At home, he has his issues out there at Fenway. He just gives up a lot of hard contact in general, and the walks are still something that he needs to rectify. He was much better towards the back half of the season. As a matter of fact, his last 4 starts last season, he had just 3 walks, got 6+ punch-outs, and every one of them, he really put it together as a pitcher, but still a little bit of a concern going up against a Seattle Mariners lineup that it's got Julio Rodriguez, who is rock solid, and the fact that you get back Mitch Haniger, I think that that's big for the team as well. He's always had his best success with the Seattle Mariners. Cal Raleigh is big dumper. He's able to do a nice job hitting the deep ball, but you don't have as many guys on this team. They're able to move the line, and Seattle's one of the more pitcher-friendly ballparks out there in all of baseball, so I thought that was a little bit befuddling. J.P. Crawford is one of those guys that is able to move the line. They're going to be relying upon Ore Polanco, who comes over from the Minnesota Twins, to do so, but I just don't know if guys like Dylan Moore or Dominic Canzone are really going to be those guys to be able to reach base. And for the Boston Red Sox, this team has a lot of bullpen issues, but you still have Rafael Devers, who he's a nice power hitter. He's able to do a nice job moving the line. He had a home run to begin the season last year. Now, you've got Trevor Story, he had a hit yesterday, but I don't know what to think of him. He was just absolutely terrible last season, so that's a little bit of a wait-and-see sort of approach. I do like the fact that they picked up Tyler O'Neill, though. Guy that's had a lot of upside for the St. Louis Cardinals. He had 34 home runs in 2021, has dealt with some injuries the last few years. That's a nice upside guy. Tristan Casas did a really nice job being able to get on base towards the back half of the season. You've got Jaron Duran, who does a nice job being able to get on base as well, but for the Red Sox, it's all about, can this bullpen hold up? You've got Kenley Jansen and the closers rolling. I do like what Chris Martin is able to bring to the table, but then you've got guys like a Chase Anderson, who's a big giant question mark. What are you going to do with Greg Weiser, Yoli Rodriguez, guys like this? And for the Seattle Mariners, this team has been a factory in terms of just finding guys that are good bullpen pieces. Guys like Gabe Spire, that just came off of the scrap heap, have been very solid for the team. They lose Penn Murphy in the offseason, but that said, you're still able to rely upon someone like a Trent Thornton, who's been able to be very solid. Andres Munoz is able to throw straight up gas. I believe that they're going to be without Matt Brash to begin the season, but they pick up Cody Bolton, who is pretty solid with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and George Kirby. He is just the absolute textbook definition of pinpoint accuracy. I think that he had more than one walk in like 2 starts last season, might have been 3, but I mean, this guy's walks per 9 rate is typically right around about 1. He does give up as a result a little bit of hard contact, but even last year, that was about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings. He gets about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. I do think that he's going to do a solid job in these friendly confines. Boston is not going to get any runs very cheaply, and I do think that for Nick Pivetta, he's able to throw a nice start as well, but I do think that the Mariners bullpen in the end allows the Mariners to be able to get the job done. I did set my money line at a minus 152. If you're taking a look at the run line, laying a run and a half with the Seattle Mariners, you're going to be getting anywhere between about a plus 135 to a plus 140. I would need to be getting a little bit closer to a plus 147, and this is a money line that right now we are finding a stray 150 out there at that minus 150 number. That's a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it, so I'm looking at a little bit of a chalkier money line as I'm recording this to go along the total under. Set my total at 6.9, so whether you got a 7 or a 7.5, looking at the under. Now we have my DK Network right to pick. Let's try to go to 3-0 on these. 983, 984 on the betting board. The New York Metropolitans, they play us to the Milwaukee Brewers. Freddie Peralta goes for the Crew, and Jose Quintana is on the bump for the Mets. The Mets are anywhere between minus 105 to minus 110 favorites. You're finding the Brewers between even money and minus 110. 7.5 is the total. Over and under anywhere between minus 105 to minus 115. And right up here is on the Mets. Wouldn't want to go really past minus 122, but I'm willing to trust in the Mets in this ordeal because Freddie Peralta looked really rough during the spring. Had north of a 7 ERA, his swing and miss stuff was down, and that's just a Freddie Peralta experience. Being someone who is a Milwaukee Brewers fan, his worst month of the season because they sort of combined March and April since you typically only get like one start in March, but he's got for his career north of a 4 ERA in the month of March, and if you take a look at his first 10 starts from the season ago, he was posting up north of a 4.6 ERA, was giving up nearly 4 walks per 9 innings, founded from there. He's just perennially a little bit of a slow starter. It's a Brewers team that they are going to back him up with a bullpen that was number 2 in the big leagues last season in terms of ERA. I like Abner Uribe. He's very solid for the team. Joe Payamps, Hobie Milner, these guys are great, but you know what's missing from this team? Devin Williams, a very dominant closer, and guess what the New York Mets get back? That was so big to why they had their issues last year. Oh yeah, they get back Edwin Diaz, and that is absolutely massive in my opinion for this New York Mets team. When he was out there 2 seasons ago, was able to provide 17 strikeouts per 9 innings, a sub-150 ERA. They bring in Jorge Lopez. That should be able to help out this bullpen a little bit. Had his issues last season, but 2 years ago when he was out there with the Minnesota Twins coupled with the Baltimore Orioles was relatively solid. I looked Brooks Raley in the bullpen. This is clearly a better bullpen that we've seen in past years. Heck, Michael Tonkin is a guy that is able to be a long guy that's going to be relatively solid, and they go up against a Milwaukee Brewers lineup that was dead last in the big leagues last season in terms of home runs per game on the road among National League teams. Now, they do sign Rhys Hoskins. He had 30 home runs 2 seasons ago, but had as many home runs as myself a season ago. You're relying upon some big-time bumps from some of these guys that were just albatrosses towards the bottom of the fold, like Joey Weimer is someone that couldn't reach base last season. Bryce Terang is someone that's had his issues. They're looking at Jake Bauers trying to be able to make the roster and be able to give you a bit of something. I really like Sal Fried, like good in the field. He's able to reach base. Garrett Mitchell, you've got some upside out there in the outfield along with Christian Yelich, who he's a relatively reliable guy as well, but you take a look at the Mets. Mark Vantinos had actually a really, really good spring for the team. Francisco Lindor, if he can finally figure it out, he has been all over the place with the New York Mets and really the last 3 seasons in general, but was able to supply 31 home runs. That's big. You've got Pete Alonso, just year in and year out, you're able to pencil him in the top 10 with regards to his home run power. Starling Marte, Brandon Nimmo, these are guys, they're able to reach base as well. I do think that the Mets, after they towards back half of the season, were very touch and go with regards to their offense. I do think that they're going to be able to find it with guys like Omar Narvaez and company. I do think that the Mets did a good job of being able to fortify themselves, and the fact that now you've got back in the fold Edwin Diaz and you lose for the Brewers, Evan Williams, I think that that's going to be a big elixir for a Mets team that throws out their guy, Jose Quintana, who's very much a pitcher contact guy, but this ballpark in New York, it is very much pitcher-friendly. When Jose Quintana made his starts in the City Ballpark last season, he had a sub-275 ERA. He only gave up about 2.9 walks per 9 innings throughout the season with 0.7 home runs per 9 innings. And going against a Milwaukee Brewers team that they just don't do a necessarily amazing job of being able to hit the deep ball, I do think that the Mets find a way to be able to get the job done on what is going to be their opening day. So my write-up here is on the Mets money line, and I do think that this is going to be a lower-scoring game. Even though Freddie Peralta had struggles during the spring, I do think that both of these pitchers give you a relatively solid start. Set my total at 7.2. I like the under, and my write-up that is on the Mets money line, and we're going to have things up with 985, 986 on the betting board. The Philadelphia Phillies play host to the Atlanta Braves. Spencer Strider is on the bump for the Bravos, and Zach Whelan and Dylan Wheeler is on the bump for the Phillies. Phillies, and between plus 105 to plus 112, and between minus 115 to minus 125, your number on Atlanta. 7.5 is the total. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. Got a pair of guys that they've got relatively big struggles coming into this game. For Zach Wheeler, I've just noticed this the last few years. His ERA in the month of April is the highest of his career. He throws for north of a 3.5 ERA in the month of April / very, very late March. It gets all lumped together, and then from there, he's always able to find his way. Meanwhile, you've got a guy in Spencer Strider that, if you look at all of the bad starts that he's had throughout his career, darn near all of them come against the Philadelphia Phillies. I have no idea how, I have no idea why, but this is just not a place where he's comfortable pitching in general. Now, Spencer Strider was absolutely amazing during spring. He was getting punch-out after punch-out, and you just take a look at what he was able to do last season. His strikeouts per 9 rate last season was right around about 13. The big issue for him was that he would just give up oftentimes a little bit too much hard contact. His walks numbers are not bad for a guy that gets as many strikeouts as he does. He gives you about 2.9 to 3 walks per 9 innings. You're able to live with that. Meanwhile, Zach Wheeler, the pinpoint command is very good from sub 2 walks per 9 innings, and he's always had his success going up against the Atlanta Braves, while Spencer Strider has had his issues against the Phillies, but again, have to have a little bit of trepidation with the early season struggles that Wheeler has had in the past, but I do think that the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be able to get to Spencer Strider in this spot. You've got Bryce Harper, who's just an absolute gamer time and time again. You need him to come up with a big hit. He's going to be able to do so, and if I remember correctly, he last season was out of the fold, and he was dealing with injury throughout the season. Now he's fully healthy, so now we're able to unlock his full potential. Trey Turner, we remember he got off to a rough start last season, but as he got into his tenure with the Philadelphia Phillies, he was really one of the best hitters in all of baseball towards the back half of the campaign. Nick Castellanos is able to hit for both power and is able to get on base. Now, Yohan Rojas, very good in the field, not so good at the plate, but past that, you've got a whole bunch of guys that just 1 through 9, sans I would say Yohan Rojas, you've got a bunch of forces out there, and you've got the same for the Atlanta Braves. Like, the Atlanta Braves lineup, they were number one in the big leagues in terms of, like, runs per game, home runs per game. They check darn near every box that you could find. They pick up Jared Kelenic in the offseason, who has always been a big-time prospect, has not necessarily been able to put it together, but, I mean, that's a nice pickup for the team. You saw him out there in the outfield. Guys like Ronald Acuna Jr., the reigning MVP. You've got Michael Harris II, who does a nice job moving the line. He's got a little bit of pop in his bat, as well as it was actually Matt Olson, who actually led the league in home runs last season. Ozzie Albies gets forgotten about. And, I mean, heck, you pick up in the offseason another guy that I like in terms of his power, Adam Duvall. He's going to be a little bit more of a platoon outfielder. You got to think that perhaps you can put him at DH a little bit for Marcell Ozuna. This is a Braves team that can match up with darn near anyone. It comes down to the bullpens in this game as well. You got a Atlanta Braves bullpen that was a little bit touch and go, but when Tyler Matzek is fully healthy like he is, that's going to be impactful for the team. You've got Pierce Johnson, Joey Jimenez, pair of guys that I really like towards back half of this just bullpen in general for Pierce Johnson. He was like brutal to start the season last year, and then he got a new lease on life when he got acquired by the Braves in 24 appearances with the Braves, 0.76 ERA. Meanwhile, for the Philadelphia Phillies, you don't have to deal with Craig Kimbrell anymore. Thank goodness gracious. Sir Anthony Dominguez, you got to expect him to be relatively solid out there in the bullpen. Connor Brogdon, I know that he's had his ups and downs, but he's not a bad bullpen piece for the team. Gregory Soto, after a rough start to the season last year, he was able to figure it out. And Junior Marte was terrible to begin the season last year. He actually turned out to be a nice bullpen piece, and you've got length if you need it out of Matt Strahm as well. So I do like this spot for the Philadelphia Phillies. I feel like they should be a slight favorite here at a -108, and I think that both of these relatively good starting pitchers are both going to be giving up 2 to 3 runs apiece and do their part for the over. Semi-total at 8.1, like the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the Phillies on the money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Will Hill of VSiN for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. That means I'm coming at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.